The arrival of the hidden Armada. The universe held its breath as the UESF carrier Indomitable hovered silently in the vastness of space, facing a dire threat. The Komar, a race of technologically superior aliens, had long considered humanity little more than a minor nuisance, incapable of challenging their might. Veteran pilot Stephen Warren tightened his grip on the controls of his T-17 fighter, his heart pounding as the worn leather creaked under his fingers. This would be their final stand. Over the comms, the disdainful voice of Komar Admiral Sirius echoed, dripping with arrogance. "Your antique vessels are nothing but toys. This ends now." The human fleet, a ragtag assembly of outdated ships, appeared hopelessly outmatched. But as the first Komar torpedoes hit, the hull of the Indomitable began to shed like a snake sloughing its skin, revealing the sleek, deadly lines of an entirely different kind of ship beneath, a warship of alien design, bristling with weapons and pulsating with strange energy. This was no relic of a bygone era. This was the Shadow Fleet, humanity's true power, hidden until now. Stephen's lips curled into a smile as he heard the order crackle through his headset. Activate Contingency Omega-1. In an instant, the battle transformed. The once rickety human fighters, including Stephen's T-17, shifted as hidden panels slid back, revealing state-of-the-art weapons and armor. They weren't just antiques. They were wolves in sheep's clothing. The Komar, who had underestimated humanity's resolve, now faced the true fury of a species pushed to the brink. With a roar, Stephen's fighter surged forward, his neural link connecting seamlessly with the ship's enhanced systems. He and his wingman, Jake, dove into the fray, their ships dancing through the enemy formation with a lethal grace. The Komar pilots, caught off guard, found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. The trap had been sprung, and the Shadow Fleet was ready to claim its first victims. The fury of the Shadow Fleet. As the battle raged on, the Komar's once supreme confidence began to waver. Their sleek fighter craft, designed to crush lesser beings, were now being torn apart by the relentless assault of the human pilots. Stephen and Jake flew in perfect harmony, their neural interfaces allowing them to anticipate each other's moves with uncanny precision. But the Komar were quick to adapt. They began to alter their tactics, pairing up their fighters to draw human fire, while the second ship would strike from a blind spot. It was a clever strategy, one that began to take its toll on the human forces. Stephen gritted his teeth as he narrowly avoided a barrage of torpedoes, his ship's shields flaring from the glancing blow. "They're all over us." Jake's voice crackled through the comms, his T-17 trailing smoke as he wheeled away from a pursuing enemy. Despite their advanced technology, the human fleet was still outnumbered. The Komar pressed their advantage, hemming the humans in, forcing them back toward the Indomitable. Stephen's heart sank as a fresh wave of Komar reinforcements dropped out of FTL, their ships swarming like locusts. Then, just as hope began to fade, space lit up with new contacts. A voice, calm and precise, came over the comms. "This is Colonel Amir Hassan of Erebus Wing. Apologies for our late arrival." A fleet of human ships, unlike anything Stephen had ever seen, tore into the Komar flank with surgical precision. These were the hidden assets of the Shadow Fleet, vessels equipped with weapons that made even the advanced Komar dreadnoughts look obsolete. Lances of searing light sliced through Komar shields as if they weren't even there, while missiles split into dozens of submunitions, each one finding its target with terrifying accuracy. The Komar formations unraveled, their ships scattering in panic as the full might of humanity's hidden arsenal was unleashed. The tide of battle had turned, but the cost had yet to be fully realized. A desperate gambit. Even as the Komar dreadnought Imperious Ascendancy surged forward on a collision course with the Indomitable, the human forces fought back with renewed vigor. But the dreadnought's heavy armor shrugged off the attacks of the Erebus Wing ships, its course unaltered. Admiral Sirius's voice boomed across the battlefield, a mix of fury and madness. "You treacherous humans. You think you can outwit us. If we must fall, we will take you with us." Stephen's eyes widened as he realized the dreadnought's intent. The Indomitable's transformation had come at a cost. Its new form was powerful, but it was also vulnerable. If the Imperious Ascendancy collided with the human flagship, it would be catastrophic. "Focus fire on the engines." Colonel Hassan's voice was icy with command, but the weapons of the Erebus wing seemed ineffective against the dreadnought's reinforced armor. Stephen's heart pounded as he saw the massive ship bearing down on them. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Ignoring the panicked voices of his squadmates, Stephen pushed his thrusters to the limit, his ship hurtling toward the Imperious Ascendancy. At the last moment, he flipped his fighter end over end, slamming the reinforced tail into the dreadnought's U-screen with bone-jarring force. The transparent aluminum held for a heartbeat before shattering, the bridge of the Imperious Ascendancy explosively decompressing. Stephen caught a brief glimpse of Admiral Sirius's face, twisted in shock, before the vacuum of space claimed him. But there was no time to celebrate. Stephen's fighter was crippled, its systems failing as he reached for the eject handle. The cockpit blew away, and he was flung into the void. Revelations and deception. Stephen's escape pod spiraled toward the Indomitable, the battle around him a blur of lights and explosions. As his pod slammed into the hangar bay, he was immediately pulled out by a pair of strong hands, dragged into the depths of the ship. "Lieutenant Warren, with me," a crisp, unfamiliar voice commanded. Stephen blinked, disoriented, as he was led through the ship's corridors at a brisk pace. The man in front of him wore a uniform unlike any he'd seen before, all sharp lines and matte black, a silver sword wreathed in flames emblazoned on his shoulder. "Who are you? What's going on?" Stephen demanded, but the man ignored him, striding purposefully through the ship until they arrived at a nondescript door. Inside was a small Spartan briefing room, filled with grim-faced officers. At their head stood a man Stephen instantly recognized, Colonel Amir Hassan, the hero of the Clarion campaign, presumed dead over a decade ago. "Take a seat, Lieutenant," Hassan said, his voice commanding instant respect. "What you saw today was just the beginning. The Khomar are just one threat among many, and far from the worst." Hassan tapped a control, and a hologram sprang to life above the table, displaying strange ships, alien worlds, and creatures that defy description. "We are the Erebus Wing, humanity's first and last line of defense against the horrors of the galaxy. And we need you." Stephen swallowed, his throat dry. "Need me for what?" "For your skills, your courage, your ability to think on your feet. We have a mission, one that could turn the tide of the war. But it requires someone like you." Hassan's expression was grave. "There's a catch, though. To join us, you'll have to die." "A new beginning." Stephen blinked in shock. "Die? What do you mean?" "The Erebus Wing doesn't exist, officially," Hassan explained, his tone matter-of-fact. "We died years ago. In accidents, in battles, in deep space. It's the only way we can operate. If you join us, Stephen Warren will have to die too." Stephen's mind raced. He thought of what he'd seen. The secret war humanity had been fighting, the sacrifices that had been made in the shadows. If he could make a difference, didn't he have a duty to try? "What do you need me to do?" Stephen asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Hassan smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Welcome to the Erebus Wing, Lieutenant. Let's get to work." The transition was swift. As rumors of Stephen's tragic death spread through the Indomitable, his body was quietly whisked away to a hidden medical facility deep within the ship. There, advanced technology worked to heal his wounds and prepare him for the next phase of his life, a life in the shadows, where his name would be forgotten and his existence erased from official records. As Stephen recovered, he was thrust into a relentless training regimen, his days a blur of physical conditioning, tactical simulations, and classified briefings. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a ghost, a member of the Erebus Wing, tasked with missions that no one else could handle. His new squad mates were a breed apart, each chosen for their unique skills and unbreakable resolve. There was Liu Mei, a former intelligence operative with a penchant for cyber warfare; Marcus Vaughn, a sniper whose calm exterior hid a fierce loyalty to his comrades; and Aaron Hale, a demolitions expert with a wicked sense of humor and a reputation for being able to blow up anything. Together, they formed the core of Erebus Wing's strike team, and under Hassan's watchful eye, they prepared for their first mission, a deep infiltration into Komar space to retrieve critical intelligence on a new weapon the aliens were developing, one that could tip the balance of power irrevocably in their favor. As they embarked on their mission, Stephen couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. He was no longer the man he once was, and the world would never know of his sacrifices. But that didn't matter. He had found a new purpose, one that transcended the ordinary, one that would help safeguard humanity's future. And as the sleek, stealthy ship of the Erebus Wing slipped into the darkness of space, Stephen felt a strange sense of peace. This was where he belonged, in the shadows, fighting the battles no one else could, ensuring that humanity would live to see another day. Into the abyss. The Erebus Wing's mission was clear: penetrate deep into Komar space and gather intelligence on their new weapon, codenamed Abyss. The journey through the black void of space was filled with a tense silence, each crew member focused on their task as they prepared for the dangerous operation ahead. Stephen sat in the cockpit of their sleek, stealth ship, aptly named Spectre. Unlike the T-17 fighters he was used to, the Spectre was a marvel of engineering, equipped with cutting-edge cloaking technology and advanced weaponry designed for covert operations. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the light around it, making the ship almost invisible to the naked eye. ETA to Komar Prime. 3 hours, Liu Mei reported, her voice cool and collected. The rest of the team was strapped into their seats, reviewing the mission details for what felt like the 100th time. "We're going in dark," Hassan reminded them from the captain's seat. "No comms, no emissions. We get in, get the data, and get out before they know we're there." Stephen's fingers danced over the controls as he brought up the ship's systems diagnostics. Everything was functioning perfectly, but that did little to quell the knot in his stomach. This mission was unlike anything he'd ever done. They weren't just facing superior firepower. They were venturing into the heart of enemy territory, where the slightest mistake could mean death. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the cabin grew palpable. Everyone was lost in their thoughts, mentally preparing for what was to come. Finally, the countdown reached 0, and the Spectre dropped out of FTL, just beyond the gravity well of Komar Prime, the homeworld of their enemy. The planet hung before them, a swirling mass of green and blue, surrounded by a ring of massive defense platforms. The Abyss facility, where the weapon was being developed, was located on one of the planet's poles, hidden deep beneath layers of rock and ice. Commencing approach, Stephen whispered, guiding the Spectre towards the planet. The ship's cloaking system activated, rendering them invisible to the Komar's powerful sensor arrays. Despite the stealth technology, every member of the team knew that if the Komar detected them, they wouldn't stand a chance. As they entered the upper atmosphere, the ship shuddered slightly from the turbulence. Stephen gritted his teeth, keeping the ship steady as they descended towards the ice-covered pole. The landscape below was harsh and barren, a frozen wasteland that seemed inhospitable to any form of life. "There," Marcus Vaughn said, pointing to a massive crevasse that split the ice like a wound. "That's our entry point." Stephen maneuvered the Spectre into the crevasse, using the natural formation to mask their approach. The walls of ice rose high on either side, the sunlight barely penetrating the depths. They continued down, deeper and deeper, until they reached a massive cavern that housed the entrance to the Abyss facility. The facility itself was a fortress, carved into the ice with only a few visible access points. Advanced sensors and automated turrets dotted the perimeter, ready to obliterate anything that approached uninvited. Stealth mode engaged. Lou reported as the ship's systems powered down to minimize their energy signature. "We'll need to go in on foot from here." Hassan nodded, and the team moved swiftly, donning their advanced combat suits and checking their weapons. Each suit was equipped with adaptive camouflage, rendering them nearly invisible against the icy surroundings. "Remember," Hassan said, his voice low and serious, "we're here to gather intel, not engage. Avoid conflict if possible. Our primary objective is to locate the data core and extract the information on the Abyss weapon." With a final nod, the team disembarked from the Spectre, moving silently through the shadows. The cavern was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of their boots on the ice as they approached the facility's entrance. Lou hacked into the security system with ease, her fingers flying over her portable terminal. Within moments, the heavy blast door slid open, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led into the heart of the facility. "Move out," Hassan ordered, and the team slipped inside, their presence undetected. The Abyss unveiled. The interior of the Abyss facility was a stark contrast to the frozen wasteland outside. Warm, sterile air greeted them as they moved through the narrow corridors, the walls lined with displays of alien text and holographic readouts that Stephen couldn't even begin to decipher. They encountered few Komar personnel as they advanced deeper into the facility, their camouflage allowing them to bypass security patrols and automated defenses with ease. The further they went, the more apparent it became that this place was more than just a research station. It was the nerve center of the Komar's most secret and dangerous operations. Lou guided them through the maze of corridors, her terminal showing them the way to the central data core. "We're close," she whispered, as they reached a large reinforced door at the end of a long corridor. Marcus took position, his rifle trained on the door, while Aaron placed small charges on the locking mechanism. With a nod from Hassan, Aaron triggered the explosives, and the door blew open with a muted thud, the sound barely registering beyond the corridor. They moved inside swiftly, weapons raised, but the room was empty. At the center stood a massive, glowing cylinder filled with streams of data. This was the data core, the heart of the Abyss facility's operations. Lou rushed to the console, her fingers flying as she began downloading the information. "This will only take a few minutes," she muttered, her eyes focused on the terminal. But as she worked, Stephen's instincts screamed that something was wrong. The silence was too perfect, the ease with which they'd entered the facility too suspicious. He scanned the room, searching for any sign of danger, but found nothing. Then the lights flickered, and an alarm began to blare. "Shit," Lou cursed, her fingers flying even faster. "They know we're here. I need just a little more time." "Hostiles inbound," Marcus warned, his voice steady as he took up a defensive position by the door. Aaron quickly joined him, setting up additional charges as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Hassan's voice was calm but urgent. "Stephen, help Lou. We need that data." Stephen moved to her side, his heart pounding as he kept his weapon trained on the door. "How much longer?" "Almost there. Just a few more seconds," Lou replied, her eyes never leaving the screen. The seconds stretched into eternity as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The Komar were closing in, and soon they would be overwhelmed. "There," Lou shouted, pulling a data crystal from the terminal. "Got it. Let's move." They bolted from the room, sprinting back down the corridor they'd come from. The alarms continued to blare, the facility now fully aware of their presence. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Komar soldiers, their weapons raised and ready. Marcus and Aaron didn't hesitate, opening fire with precise, controlled bursts. The Komar soldiers returned fire, their energy weapons sizzling through the air as the two sides clashed in the narrow corridor. "Go. We'll hold them off," Marcus shouted, his voice resolute as he and Aaron laid down suppressive fire. "Not a chance," Stephen shouted back, refusing to leave them behind. But Hassan grabbed his arm, dragging him away. "They know what they're doing. "We have to go now," Hassan ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Reluctantly, Stephen followed, the sounds of gunfire echoing behind him as they raced through the facility. They navigated the maze of corridors, using every trick they knew to evade the Komar soldiers that now swarmed the complex. Finally, they reached the exit, the icy cavern looming before them. The Spectre was where they'd left it, its engines already humming as Lou remotely activated the ship. "Get aboard," Hassan barked, covering their retreat as they ran for the ship. Just as they reached the ramp, a deafening explosion rocked the cavern, sending chunks of ice and debris crashing down around them. Stephen looked back in horror to see the entrance to the Abyss facility collapse in on itself, sealing away any hope of Marcus and Aaron's escape. "No!" Stephen screamed, but Hassan shoved him up the ramp, the urgency in his eyes brooking no refusal. The Spectre lifted off, the ramp closing behind them as they ascended out of the cavern and back into the void of space. Stephen collapsed into a seat, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the reality of what had just happened set in. "Marcus, Aaron." Lou's voice was choked with emotion, her hands trembling as she gripped the data crystal. "They knew the risks," Hassan said quietly, his voice heavy with grief. "Their sacrifice wasn't in vain. We have the data, and that's what matters." Stephen clenched his fists, rage and sorrow swirling within him. He had lost comrades before, but this felt different. This wasn't just war. It was a reminder of the cold, brutal reality of the life they had chosen. But there was no time for mourning. They had to make it back to human space, deliver the data, and ensure that Marcus and Aaron's deaths weren't for nothing. As the Spectre streaked away from Komar Prime, Stephen vowed that he would see this mission through to the end. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifices, he would fight until the Komar threat was eliminated once and for all. The Abyss may have taken his friends, but it wouldn't take his resolve. Not now, not ever.